Good afternoon. Thank you all for joining us. I'm Karen Snow, Global Head of Listings here at Nasdaq, and we appreciate you joining us to discuss leadership through empowerment, the pathway to the C-suite and the board. Today, we'll focus on best practices for creating a mentorship program at your bank, a glimpse into the leadership journey to the C-suite and board, and leadership during uncertain times. I'm joined by three distinguished women: Heather Luck, SVP and CFO of Five Star Bank; Leanne Kassab, Senior EVP and Chief Experience Officer at CNB Bank; and Jocelyn Magnan, CEO and founder of Him for Her. At Nasdaq, our purpose is to champion inclusive growth and prosperity. And today, more than ever, organizations are striving to create equitable opportunities and to help people of all backgrounds reach their full potential. Our hope is that the insights and experiences that we share today will provide you with additional tools and knowledge to invest in your career growth and willingness to expand upon your mentorship. We encourage you to share your questions via the Q&A at the bottom of your screen, as we'll be saving time at the end. Additionally, a recording of this event will be distributed post the event. And first, I'll ask each of our panelists to introduce themselves, and in your own words and introduction, please do share one thing that you're most proud of as you think about your involvement in advancing women professionally. And Heather, I'll start with you.
Hi, good morning, everyone, and thank you, Nasdaq, for putting this on. I think this is a really special webinar that we're hosting today. Again, my name is Heather Luck, Chief Financial Officer. I've been here since 2018 and promoted into the C-suite in 2021. I really feel like I'm the beneficiary of women that have been leading me. And so I feel like my role is just to continue to empower women and just to keep promoting up in the C-suite and into management positions in our bank. And I'm very proud of that. So I'll hand it to the group there.
Leanne?
Sure, I'll go next. I'm Leanne Kassab. I'm the Chief Experience Officer for CNB Bank, which is a $5.6 billion bank, and we operate 6 divisions across 4 states. I've been with the bank for 27 years, and I like to say I grew up in the marketing team. And I think that the one thing that I am most proud of is my team. I have a fantastic group of really engaged, smart individuals, and there isn't a challenge that they won't accept or surpass.
Great. And Jocelyn?
Hi, everybody. I'm Jocelyn Mangan, and I'm the CEO and founder of Him for Her. And I have a long background in product and technology, many companies that have been listed on NASDAQ, and really happy to be here today. I think I am most proud of starting an organization 5 years ago that is solely dedicated to putting women in corporate boardrooms because I truly believe it'll change the world for the better. So thank you for having me.
And we could not agree with you more. So thank you for all that you're doing. So Heather, I think we'll start with you. You first joined Five Star as a VP of Finance in 2021 and transitioned to the role as CFO. How did you prepare for your role, and what were the biggest challenges and really that you've seen as CFO?
So I think I've been preparing for this role for probably 20 years in my career, right? I started out with getting my master's in accounting and finance, becoming a CPA licensed in the state of California, becoming an auditor for 8 years at Ernst & Young, and working and getting to see how other CFOs ran their departments and helped in the C-suite. And then I joined Five Star back in 2018. I think it's been a great journey, and I'm very grateful for the opportunities that I've been given. You know, challenges have been every single year, there's been a new challenge, it seems like, right? It's, you know, whether it's going through COVID and PPP in the banking industry, and then, you know, the events in March have just really been a different problem every single year. And I think, you know, one of the things I've learned is just to be flexible and to be nimble and to communicate. I think those are the three skills that I've really had to refine as I've gone through this journey. You know, and then also too, I promoted up to be CFO whenever we were going public. So we're listed on the Nasdaq, and we're very happy to be part of the Nasdaq family. But navigating that, you know, promoting up into the C-suite is one thing, but then also doing it in a time of transition, especially in the accounting field, that changes your whole world as a public company in the accounting department. And so that was definitely a challenge for us, but I'm so proud of the things that we've done as a team to get to the other side of that event.
Mm-hmm. That's really helpful. And when you think about your leadership style, you mentioned that, you know, you've had to become more flexible, nimble, and communicate more. How often do you evaluate your management style and what might be required for that next, you know, period of time?
I think that's just ongoing. I think it's, you know, as we continue to evolve as a company, we're very much a high growth company. We're 3.5 billion in assets. And when I started in 2018, we were only $1 billion in assets, right? And so I think as you continue to grow with your organization, you have to continuously reassess what is working and what is not, and then where do you need to pivot? I don't think I'd like to be able to say I'm an accountant, right? I like schedules and rules. I wish I could say it's, oh, every year I take a look at myself. It's a continuous process.
Yeah. Constantly evolving. So Leanne, as we prep for this call, you shared with us that you grew up in marketing. You mentioned that in your intro as well. Can you share your experience with our audience today, and maybe some thoughts around how that has led to your success today?
Sure. Yeah, so I mentioned that I joined the bank 27 years ago as a marketing assistant. And while this was an entry-level position, I immediately felt a purpose here. I was passionate about helping this small bank, which at the time, I know I mentioned we're 5.6 billion, but at the time we were about 450 million with 11 branches under one division. And so I really felt that I was here to help this small bank grow and succeed. I mean, I really thought it was all in my hands. But think about it. When you're in marketing, you're involved in everything that affects the customer. And because it's your role to communicate everything to the customer. So over the next 20 years, we were involved in acquisitions, de novo startup of new divisions, system conversions, product launches, online solutions, and so on and so forth. So in those meetings, because you're so hyper-focused on the customer and how you're going to communicate to the customer, you naturally are looking for the benefit to the customer, and then you begin to really advocate for the customer. And when you, even when you aren't in the middle of one of these big initiatives, marketing is always looking for ways and opportunities to differentiate the bank. And you want to do this in a very genuine way. So you begin driving differentiating experiences for your customers, be they, products or solutions or whatever they are. But this isn't just for the value of the customer. It has to also be a value to the bank. You really need to be just as passionate about the success and profitability of the bank, or your ideas aren't going to get very far, right, Heather? Marketing really is always looking for that win-win. And so when my CEO came to me about 10 years ago and asked me to expand my responsibilities to client experience, it felt like a very natural transition to me. I mean, after all, I had been advocating for the customer for the 20 years I had been in marketing. And then it didn't take us long to figure out the connection between happy employees and happy customers. So today I oversee both client and employee experience, and I love every minute of it. My purpose really hasn't changed in 27 years. I'm still focused on the bank's growth and success.
That's a really interesting point, and we talk a lot about purpose here at Nasdaq. Can you talk a little bit about how you're tying the employee experience with the client experience, or client experience with the employee? How do you determine what areas, as it relates to purpose, are really things that are important to lean into?
Well, we actually have an employee experience task force, and what we've found is that no two employees are alike. They all are motivated by very different things. We really focus on employee engagement. So not just happy employees. Of course, we want our employees to be happy, but our real goal is to have engaged employees, because they're the ones that are leading their own areas. They're leading their own interactions with customers, and they're the ones that know when something could be better and they have ideas. So that's really what we're focused on. We welcome employee suggestions. Uh, we look at our reward and recognition programs, and just always surveying and touching base with our employees and talking with them to find out what we can do better.
Yeah, and I'm guessing that those are opportunities also for women in particular to step up and really own something, and you then have the opportunity to shine a light on them.
Absolutely. And 67% of our employees are women. So we have a lot of opportunities. I'm sure we'll be getting into some of those here in your other questions, but yes, we definitely focus on women in the banking.
Yeah. So Jocelyn, let's pivot to you. I think many of our listeners probably aspire to be on a board, if they're not already, doing some nonprofit work. And you've had an incredible background in market tech, as well as leadership and boards, and of course, with him for her founding the business. When you think about your path, what advice might you have for people who aspire to be on a public or private company board, but one that is looking to be profitable?
Yeah, so I think it starts with, what is a board? And a board is there to guide a CEO, to guide a company, obviously there to make sure the company is financially viable. But increasingly, the job is harder than that for all the reasons we've already discussed, right? Companies are navigating lots of things. It's actually really tough to be a CEO in today's environment because of that. And so, for those of you who are interested, I'd say keep the interest up, because we need you. That's one thing. But the how do you get there, it can feel a lot harder, because if you've never been in a boardroom, it feels like a reach. So the first piece of advice I would say is gain exposure to your boardroom. I was fortunate. The first time I was brought into a boardroom, I was 28 years old. I was not qualified to be there in my mind, but someone brought me in to present an idea. So, if you are someone who is in a position to bring in people to the boardroom, do it, even if they're there to observe or to listen, because that makes that goal more attainable, because you can actually see what it is, which most people don't get to do. And if that's not possible because you're in a larger corporation, you still might have curiosity, right? You can still ask the people who do go to the board meeting, what is it they can share? And then, in terms of the how to get there, still the predominant way people find board members is through word of mouth and networks. And so what I would advocate is for you to continue to network with those people who do have access to the boardroom. And those are specifically board members, sitting board members. It's also investors, and it's also CEOs. And then if you are serving on nonprofit boards, great thing to look around. Who are those people on your nonprofit board sitting around you? Because they're already seeing how great you are. And chances are one or more of them is tied to a for-profit company. So, you have to be proactive. You have to raise your hand and say, hey, this is something I'm interested in. Could you please keep me top of mind? And remember that you can describe what it is you bring to a board in that guiding role.
Very good advice. And when in your career did you start to think that you might want to be on a path as it relates to boards?
It's interesting. So because my discipline is product management, I was often brought into the boardroom. So I'd say I grew up with board exposure because people always want to know what the company's building. So for better or for worse, that fell to me. But it was when ChowNow reached out, and I actually, in fairness, hadn't thought about it yet. So this was, I think I'm coming up on 6 years at ChowNow. But once I started the conversation, it was a no-brainer. I'm really passionate about restaurant technology. Spent a decade at Open Table, and here was this restaurant technology company with the CEO who was so passionate about the industry. And so I have to say the opportunity came to me before I had set out an explicit goal to do it. But I think it probably would have been shortly after that. And it did become shortly after that. I was like, this is something I want to continue to do, because it's an opportunity to give to a company, to really have impact, but it's also an opportunity professionally to continue to learn. And especially since today's business environment is so dynamic. So that's kind of my personal story.
Interesting. And I guess Leanne and Heather, do you see opportunities in your organizations where women or more junior people might have the opportunity to get exposure to the board?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and start. I actually just this year have been invited to be part of the board meetings. Obviously, I'm not a board member, but it's been very helpful to me. We have 3 women also that sit on our board from other organizations. And we are always inviting middle-level management and other individuals in the organization to present to the board, especially at strategic planning time. But we like to give them that exposure. It's good for them. It's good for the board to really hear from the people that are doing the work and making the difference. So I'm like sitting here nodding as Jocelyn's talking. I completely agree with everything she's saying. It's great for everybody.
Totally agree on that too. Can't echo enough what Leanne and Joycelyn have said. We definitely like to invite people to present to the board and participate, because it is good for the board to see the future leaders of our company. One thing that I think is really special that we do here at 5-Star is we have a program called the Accelerated Leadership Track, where we basically hire students fresh out of college. So whenever they join this program, they have a full-time job. And what they do is they do about 3 different rotations at the minimum in different departments. So they can really see where they fit in the organization, see kind of where their natural skill set lies, and then we place them in that department. It gives them not only a good view of different opportunities within the bank, but then it also gives them a bigger network within the company too. But one thing that we do at the end of this program is they all present a project to the board of directors on something that can be improved, right? So this last round was a lot relating to checklists and training and things like that to really kind of take us to the next level. And they do a presentation in front of the full board. And so I think that's just so special. And I think it really gives our board the insight into who we're hiring and training and leading. And then also too, it gives them a unique perspective on what the C-suite is doing on a regular basis with the board as well.
Mm-hmm. That's super exciting. And I can imagine that they're all going home and telling their parents that they presented to the board, which is pretty cool. And their parents, I'm sure, are like, oh my God, my child. So that's exciting. Any other things that come to mind from your organizations, or Jocelyn, that you've heard along the beaten trail of ideas that are ones that our listeners might take back to their organizations, programs structured or not, that might be great ideas for them to think about as a way to stand out within their organization, something they might need.
Well, I would
Yeah,
say,
go ahead.
yeah, I mean, when it comes to the boardroom, I think a lot of it is just demystification, really just people understanding what that room is. You see it in movies, or is this room over there? But big decisions get made there, big decisions that affect those employees, big decisions that affect the products that they're building and the communities those products are being put into. And so I think as leaders in organizations, one of the best things you could be doing for the company at large is demystifying your own boardroom. Who's on it? What are you talking about? Obviously not the private stuff, but even big picture, so that people can picture what's going on there, why they should pay attention to it. Not even just for their own company, but for the other products and services that they're out there buying and using. So that would be my number one kind of takeaway that leaders can bring back to their organizations for their employees.
Leanne and Heather, anything from you?
But the one thing that really kind of comes to mind is, I remember my early days and being invited to speak to the board at strategic planning and things, and it was terrifying. And we've actually had employees that bow away from that. And I think that it's important to communicate that it is nothing to be afraid of, and to lean into these opportunities. So for me, I think that's really what we try to communicate out, and especially by having people into the board, they're coming back and talking about it to their friends in the lunchroom. They're talking about it to their team members, and they survived it, and they're better for it.
I think the demystification is essential, right? They are sitting there on the board for governance, but really, and especially in banking, they're usually significant shareholders or owners of the company. And so they really do care about the overall success and strategic mission of the company. And so I think it's, demystification, getting them to know members of our company. And it's just making that another level of experiences that our staff can have.
Okay, and one of the questions in the Q&A is, who do you contact to ask about maybe observing a board meeting? Do you have any thoughts around that?
I mean, I think the best place to start is whoever you're reporting to, and find out where they're connected to the board, or if they are connected to the board, right? So, obviously there's so many people on the call, and everybody sits in different organizations at different levels. But, one truth is that I would guess most of your organizations have a board of directors. So really kind of understanding who's on it. Maybe that's public information because you're in a public company. Maybe you don't even know because you're in a private company, and maybe it's investors. And even just the curiosity around who's on the board is a good place to start. And then maybe to express to your manager, hey, I'm kind of interested in this board thing, and seeing how that person might help you understand, because all of this will depend on your own size of company and your own board culture. But trying to get exposure, and if it's not within your own company, are there boards you can join outside your company, even if it is a philanthropic or local community board of something that you're highly interested in.
Yeah, and one of the things that we've done at Nasdaq that I think has been really helpful is Adina will share with the management team down to the VP level what she's discussing at the board level, and what some of the feedback has been, just so that everyone's aware of sort of the strategic initiatives and focal points. And we certainly see a lot of the work that has been laid out at the board level, from a cybersecurity, our AI strategy, all the things that are from a people perspective, we now have pulse surveys. I think that was a question in the chat, actually. What are we doing pulse surveys? Interested to hear, Leanne and Heather, if your organizations are doing them, and how that information is then cascaded up.
So I oversee quality assurance here, and we do multiple surveys all year long. So we survey customers after every touch point. I think we have somewhere around 15 different surveys throughout the year. We do relationship surveys which is a big one, every 2 years. And we also do employee surveys. So we have a whole department that focuses on the feedback from our customers and our employees.
Yeah, on that, so we do an employee survey every 18 months. So that way we're kind of cycling through different parts of the year. So it's not the same time every year. And we're actually going through that process right now. We did our survey a little while ago, and we're going through the results as an executive team. We definitely communicate to our employees that we take action on those surveys. And so, we encourage people to be brutally honest. We want your feedback. Don't sugarcoat anything. Tell us what's going on. And then what we do is we have a company-wide Zoom, and we actually show the results and show both positive and negative, what was some of the feedback that we received, and what action are we taking to ensure that we're addressing those concerns, right? We're not perfect by any means, but we can always get better. And that's usually the communication. And so we're going through that process right now.
Interesting. So let's pivot a little bit to mentorship. I'm curious if your organizations have formal programs in place, or informally, how you help employees navigate that. And I'm interested in hearing your views on mentorship and really what it's meant to your own careers. If all three of you could comment on that, that would be great. Heather, you want to kick off?
Sure. I can honestly say I wouldn't be here today without mentors. I really, I'm a little background for me. I'm a military spouse. And so, I've kind of had to navigate that through my entire career of moving around and relocating to different locations in my husband's career. And I have been so fortunate to have had people that I can always go to and say, well, what about this? What do you think about this for my next step? And so for me, mentorship's incredibly important. We don't have a formal program here at 5-Star. It's more of a, we hire a lot of young people. And so I think that's just naturally ingrained in how we lead people and we develop people. We're just continuously learning at both the C-suite level all the way down. We're continuously learning and continuously reaching out. We are small enough. We have 200 people in our company right now. So we're small enough to where we don't have to have that formal program outside of some of our training and recruiting and hiring. But, we're very much an organization where it's okay to reach out across business lines. I frequently talk to people that I see as up and comers in operations and credit admin, and, even our business development people. It really is, we can talk to everyone. There's no formal program that we follow. So I think my best piece of advice for anyone kind of looking for that mentorship and that's hungry for that mentorship is just ask. Don't wait for a program to be there in place for you. More likely than not, people will always say yes. If someone comes to you, say, hey, could you be my mentor? Could I talk to you about this problem I'm having? And also find someone that is willing to be honest and open. It can't be all sunshine and rainbows and you're always doing a great job, because you're never going to get better if you don't address things as you go forward. So that's my best piece of advice.
We have I have kind of a similar story as Heather. I have always reached out and been very comfortable reaching out to others in the organization whom I've seen as leaders. So I've had mentors. They may not have even known they were my mentor, to be honest with you. But recently, just this year, we sent a survey out to that 67% of our women in the organization to see how many would be interested in the more formal mentor program. And we had almost 20% response to women in our bank who either are interested in being a mentee or a mentor, and in some cases, both. So we are putting together a formal program that will launch in the first quarter of 2024. And we decided to hire a consultant to help us with that, because if we're going to do this, we're going to do it right. And so we found a company that will help us match. They'll tell us, how to match a mentor and a mentee together, and also train our mentors, because I feel like I have mentored others throughout my career, but I've never had any formal training. Like, I don't know if I'm doing it right or not. So I'm looking forward to that. We'll train the mentors, we'll provide best practices to the mentees, and assist an administrator. So it's kind of a train the trainer program. So they'll help us kick off our first one. We'll run it for a year. We'll evaluate, and then we'll probably kick off, one a year is what we're thinking right now. If it turns out to be valuable to both the mentors and the mentees, that's our plan to continue that. And then even to expand it, to not just women in the organization, but also men, obviously.
And yeah, Jocelyn?
Yeah, so I'd say a lot of this is upon reflection. So, and no one really told me this, but as I look back at patterns that worked, I'd really want to plus one the comments about being proactive. So, in my career, I found myself having to be my own kind of advocate, in the sense that, I had a very amazing boss for 9 years. He's now sits on my board, so you can tell I'm still asking him for advice. But it really, like, about every 2 years, I'd be like, what's next? And he would put me to work. Well, here, this is what you want next, here's what we need to work on. So I was the one raising my hand saying, I'm already thinking about what's next. That's the proactive piece. But then we had like a framework of like, not just what I want, but what do I need to do to get to that point? So I'd say, and for me, it was always a 2-year horizon. It might be different for other people. So that was one thing. The other thing is really to be prepared. So I remember finding myself at Open Table. Open Table is growing really fast, and I needed to learn from someone who had already seen bigger. So I actually asked the head of product at LinkedIn to mentor me, because LinkedIn was bigger than we were at that time. And he said yes, but it was very structured. So we met once a quarter, and I came with 4 questions. So it wasn't like, hey, any advice on how to get bigger? It was like, here are the 3 things I'm struggling with. And so it was a very, very structured thing that I drove. And so that's the other thing, someone was saying, don't wait for the program. I fully agree with that. Create your own program that serves the needs that you're after. And then the final thing I would say is something that I found very hard to do, and now encourage others to do, which is to say out loud what you want to be when you grow up. And, knowing it can change every year, but if you want to be, a CEO or an astronaut, it doesn't actually matter, but it is really about knowing what it is the first hard part. And then the second hard part is saying it out loud. But when you do, you start to manifest activities that help to get you there, even if it feels like a super stretch. And then for managers out there, I think asking the people that work with you and work for you that question can be such a great learning experience. You learn so much about your employees because they're in roles today that may or may not be what they want to be when they grow up. And so that was something that I've learned through kind of my different years of different experiences.
I think that is amazing advice, and really ties into career development. I think that can be really challenging to keep people engaged, which we've talked about, when they don't understand necessarily the career path, but guiding them to take ownership of it and what it really looks like for them and what they're envisioning, and then giving them the tools to get there, I think is really what our role is, to helping employees thrive. So that's really great points. Leanne, I know you recently launched a female-led and focused bank division. Can you
Yeah.
talk a little bit about Impressia? I guess is the name of the division. What some of the biggest challenges were, what actually brought the bank to do that? And how is the response been from employees and customers? Does everyone want to work in that division, for example?
So that's a lot of questions. So let me start at the beginning. Actually, we had a CEO transition a couple of years ago. And so when our incoming CEO came to the bank, the first thing that he did was spent time within each of our branches and divisions and meeting with the people on our team. And he came back just, you know, he was so impressed with the level and strength of the female leadership on our organization. He called one of my coworkers and me into his office and expressed this, and he said, I just think we should start a bank for women. And so that was the direction that he gave us. And he, if we went back and asked for more direction, he would not give it. I am not the right person. I want you guys to drive this. So what Carla and I did was we gathered together about 10 of those strong women leaders in our organization. Of course, this was all on the down low, because until it had board approval, it wasn't anything we could talk about. But we pulled a group of women together, and including one of our clients, to talk about what this might look like, because it wasn't a program. We would go back and say, are you talking about a program for women? No, I'm talking about a bank for women. Okay, that was the only direction he would give us. So he didn't want to influence our decision. So we started researching and talking about it. And the more we read about it, the greater we knew the need was. And so in June, we launched Impressia Bank in 2 of our market areas, Cleveland, Ohio, and Erie, Pennsylvania. It's focused not just on the financial relationship, but also the professional development of women business owners and leaders. Our mission really is to redefine that banker-client relationship that goes really beyond traditional business banking solutions. So we provide the ability and the access to connect with other women who are working through the same challenges, into a learning academy that really focuses on enhancing the skills to grow their business. So our priority really is in helping our customers become more profitable. We want to level that gender gap for funding for women. And we know that access to capital continues to be the biggest barrier for market entry and for the success of female business owners and founders. So I'd have to say since that launch in June, the reaction from our employees and from our community has been what we're really calling a movement. It's been absolutely positive. And like really within the first few days of making the announcement in Cleveland and Erie, we had 57 leads just through our online banking portal. One of the biggest challenges, I would say, has been in finding that relationship manager, because it's unique in that they have to have not just a business banking background, but also personal banking background. In order to adapt to each client's needs. So we're also being very, very selective. But that's probably our biggest challenge. No, we have not had, I think our divisional presidents would probably hang us out to dry if we started stealing all of their employees. They're very happy. Like I said, we have such a great culture. Everybody, seems to be very happy in their role. We have had a couple, talk about making that transition, but no, we're not stealing from the bank side, from the other divisions. We're trying to play nice.
Yeah, that's great. Well, it certainly is a need. And I think a lot of the larger bank centers who have, private wealth are very focused on women, just, generationally understanding that they're likely the ones to be in charge of the purse strings at the end.
Mhm.
So good. So before I open it up to questions, I have two that I want to ask all of you. One is, what advice would you give your 25-year-old self? Jocelyn, you want to start?
Sure. I would say, try as much as you can not to care about what other people think, and don't let your parents decide if it's a good job for you to take or not.
Leanne?
So find a purpose in what you're doing and take every challenge, interaction, and experience as an opportunity to grow and learn.
Mhm.
Mine would be work hard everywhere you go, be a team player, and never leave on bad terms. If you transition out of a company, it's amazing how fast your network will grow, and don't burn bridges.
Mhm. That's my father taught me that one when I was young. It's a super important one. And then the balance question, which I always ask in a trepidatious way, because I know it's very challenging, and really being realistic with ourselves, it's pretty hard to be successful and balanced. So Leanne, do you want to take that first?
Yeah, because I'm going to steal this from one of my coworkers because I'm still learning balance. I think it's a lifelong achievement. But just a couple of years ago, one of my coworkers said it best, and I hope she's listening because it has had such a profound effect on me. She said, "You've got to give yourself grace." And that means to me, there are times you need to say no to your family. There are times you need to say no to your friends, and there are times you need to say no at work. And it's okay. So for me, I've learned that balance means giving myself grace.
That's great. Heather?
I 100% agree. I always view it as kind of work-life integration rather than a balance. There is always going to be times where you have to spend a lot of time at work, or you have to spend a lot of time with your family or other commitments. And I think for me, it's just, communicating on both sides, right? I've always been a proponent that everyone has something that is important to them in their personal lives or professional lives. And I think the more you communicate those to your teams and your families, the more supportive everyone will be. And it makes things a little easier whenever you do have to say no, or you do have to kind of bow out of something. It's like, no, I have to do this because I've got this other obligation. And being able to say no is important.
So it's funny, I was at yoga last night, and one of the guys that practices at the studio turned around and he said, "What do you do?" And I found myself saying, well, I run 2 companies. I sit on 3 boards. I have 2 preteens, and we just got a kitten, which makes 4 animals in our house. And I started laughing, and it's like, and that's why I'm at yoga. But I think when I think about balance, so there's actually no way with all that you would be balanced. So I actually don't tell anyone I'm balanced, but what I do is I do kind of a calculation on a fairly, if not daily, weekly basis of where my time is, and am I spending it doing things I'm uniquely qualified to do. Because with all of those obligations, there's no way I'd be doing all of it. Like, I can't do all the soccer practices, but I want to do all the soccer games, as just a child example. And so, I don't have the ability to have balance, but what I do have is the ability to ask myself that question. Because what I find is when I don't ask it, I am doing things that maybe I'm not uniquely qualified to do. And by doing that, I'm missing out on something else that I am uniquely qualified to do. So that's what I would say.
Yeah, very interesting. Okay, so some questions from our audience. How have you been able to combat the glass ceiling phenomenon for women in the workplace, and have you all experienced that? Heather, do you want to start?
I feel like I'm fortunate in that perspective. I'm in an industry and in a role that has been led by women for many, many years. Even when I first started, as I first started in my career, there were more men in the room, right? But as we've kind of transitioned out, you start to see more females at the conferences and in the boardroom as well, right? And so I think for me, it's just been building a network of powerful, strong women that can both empower me and also give me good mentoring as far as, how to navigate sticky situations or get me referrals into new roles. I think that's been my biggest piece of success when it comes to that.
Leanne, do you want to comment as well?
Sure. Yeah, so I think that I naively just never really thought about a glass ceiling. So I don't know if it's come across, but I didn't join the organization thinking, okay, in 20 years, I want to be in the C-suite. That was never my intention or aspiration, to be honest with you. What I've always done is just try to work at a level above the level that I am in. So all through marketing, I just always tried to give a little bit more than I was expected to give. And honestly, my CEO was my sponsor. He challenged me all the time. I never said no. I'm always up for a challenge, and I just think that's just the way that's the way I got to where I am, I guess.
Yeah, no, and it goes back to envisioning what you want to be and what Jocelyn said about, say it out loud. Because, if you're not pointing yourself in the right direction, you're never going to get there. And you kind of have to be in control of the direction that you're moving in, and be very intentional, I think is. Jocelyn, a couple questions in here about boards, and to distill them down, just two, I think, would be helpful to touch upon. What are some of the bigger risks and challenges to serving on a for-profit board is the first, and secondly, what are some of the components that you think are most important to include on your board resume?
Okay, so I'll take the first one first. And the risks and challenges of serving on a board mirror the risks and challenges of today's business landscape. You're always looking out for the company, and you're looking out for the company broadly. So you're having to take into account everything we've talked about here: employee satisfaction, company strategy, financial viability in what is, an ever-changing market. It's a tough geopolitical time. It's tough. Work from home is still like, nobody's really 100% like, here's the exact way we're going to do it, right? And so the risks and challenges, if you don't enjoy those, you probably won't enjoy the job. And so, yes, there's some very specific risks, I guess, to being a board member, but that's really not the focus. The focus of the job day to day mirrors the kind of challenges of those businesses. So that's what I would say first and foremost. And then the second one, the best things to highlight, I'd take the word resume out of the question. Because remember, you are going to be talking about what you bring to a board in lots of different settings. It might be that you're in a conversation with someone, right? It might be that you're sending an email to a contact saying, hey, I'm interested, here's what I bring. We think about what it takes to be on a board along 6 kind of areas of competencies, and in no particular order, I'll just rattle them off. We have a newsletter on this, but it's industry, functional, ESG, customer segment, scaling and growth, and business model. So those are I think the best thing I can tell you is think about yourself multidimensionally. When you think about what you bring to a board, don't just say, hey, I do product at Open Table. That's only 2 dimensions. So think about it multidimensionally. And then, a resume is really an artifact. What's more important is how you can verbalize your skill set across those dimensions in many different formats, because that's how it will actually manifest.
That's great advice. another question is, and really for Leanne and Heather, how do you view staying at an organization for your entire career versus gaining experience through multiple organizations? And I think that feeds in a little bit to what Jocelyn was saying in terms of that multi-dimensional component.
So I think Heather and I will probably have two very different views on this, because we come from both opposite ends of that spectrum. For me, I feel like if you find the right organization, stay. Sometimes it might take you a little bit to find that right organization, but one that is a good fit for you. My experience has been very positive with staying with that organization.
There is, I agree, Leanne. You know, I did hop around a little bit in my career between different organizations, and more mine was situational rather than I felt like I needed to leave. You know, I also knew that in order to meet some of my goals, I needed to do a career change, right? So I started out in an accounting department for a Nasdaq traded company. You know, while I was working on my master's in accounting and finance, but then my CFO, who was one of my best mentors, told me, he's like, as much as I hate to see you go, you need to go work in public accounting and get licensed and, you know, become a CPA and, you know, really spread your wings. And so, you know, that trigger was his best advice that he gave me to really go into working for Ernst & Young for 8 years. And then when we found out we were moving again 8 years later, it was like, okay, this is a good opportunity. I would like to talk a little bit more about accounting rather than auditing in my life. And so that was when I knew, okay, it's time to go to industry. And that's when I was affiliated with 5-Star. And it's been 5 years and I have no intention leaving anytime soon whatsoever. I feel like I've found my home, to your point, Leanne, I finally feel like I'm settled and have roots here.
That's great. And that really kind of ties in thinking about your skill sets, the mentorship, people being honest with you. I remember Adina telling the story that, you know, she was the CFO of Nasdaq, and Bob Greifeld, who was the CEO at the time, told her if she wanted to be CEO, which she thought she could be, she really needed to go somewhere else and spend a few years at another organization so that she was re-entering Nasdaq with a little bit more perspective. I thought that was amazing advice from an incredible mentor for her. So are there particular things that you think organizations can do or that you see in your organizations that are really supportive of women as you think about developing their skills, identifying the talent, bringing them up? We talked about mentorship. We've talked about potential opportunities to be in front of the boards. We've talked about opportunities to take on, you know, projects. What other things come to mind for you as we close things out here that listeners can be thinking about in terms of being in charge and standing out a little bit? Jocelyn, you want to start with that one?
Yeah, one I would mention is just that work life, you know, consolidation point that we were talking about, you know, creating a work environment where people with different commitments can still succeed and take on larger roles, I think is critically important in today's world, to make that an equal playing field.
Leanne?
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, this is quite a focus for us, really, as of the last couple of years. You know, I know I personally am focused on putting a spotlight on women and looking for women to lift up. And I think, you know, making yourselves available for that, and don't be afraid to step outside of your comfort zone. I just really think that that's important and that's key. if that is your desire.
Yeah, I think to camp onto that, both thoughts is just bringing them into the table, right? Leading by example, really communicating to all levels kind of how we've been able to make it work, right? Sometimes you have to leave early to go, to the soccer game or things like that. And that might mean that you boot up a little bit later at night when you get home, and like kind of showing that and exhibiting how you're kind of integrating everything together. I think that's one way that we can definitely lead by example.
Great, good. Well, thank you all for your time. Great words of wisdom. I have a lot of things jotted down here, including mentorship is critical. Be proactive, advocate for yourself, be prepared, say it out loud, get exposure to your board, got to network, have purpose, evolve, be flexible. So lots of great advice for people. Thank you so much for the time. And Leanne, I have to say, I spotted your podium photograph in the back. So I love that. Great. Thank you guys. Appreciate the time and have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Appreciate it.